James has been frequenting the city where his young aunt lives these days. He can't ignore his youthful and attractive aunt. Please like and subscribe. James was born in a rural area. He had an older sister and a younger sister. James was a very special child with a fair complexion and handsome looks. His mother was overjoyed that from a young age, if you taught James one thing, he'd understand 10. His parents, having inherited a fair amount of land, were busy with rice, farming and greenhouse work. As they raised James, they realized he was so intelligent that they wanted him to be educated in the city. As it happened, James' father's younger brother lived in the city. So after discussing with him, they decided to send 10-year-old James to his uncle's house in the city for schooling. James's uncle wasn't into farming like his elder brother. He sold the land his father had given him and bought a single-family home in the city, where he ran a small hole-in-the-wall shop. His uncle's shop wasn't doing so well, but it was located at the entrance of the neighborhood, so the income was steady. James' parents were so busy with farm work that they couldn't often visit James left in the small house, and they always felt sorry for that. So they sent living expenses to the small house every month, and they took care of the cost of clothing and books that James needed separately. In the small house, there were a son and a daughter younger than James. James was very gentle, and he adjusted well even after transferring to the city. Without anyone telling him, James knew well that he should not cause trouble for his aunt and uncle in the small house. James' cousins also liked that James lived in the same house with them. Whenever James had something he didn't understand while studying, he would ask his aunt, who was a tutor. His aunt, who had graduated from a four-year college at the time, gave in-home lessons in the afternoon and had a lot of educational information. With his aunt's help, James studied and was admitted to a university that everyone knows just by its name. James decided to become a tutor for his cousins, thanking his uncle and aunt for raising him, saying that he wouldn't have been able to attend such a good university if he hadn't come to the city and studied. With a wish that his cousins would do well, he sincerely gave his studies. Sadly, his uncle was seriously ill with a hereditary disease that had been passed down through the family. James' father had fortunately been healthy without any relation to the hereditary disease, but his uncle suffered from the same disease as his grandmother and passed away when James was in his second year of college. His aunt was very distressed by the loss of her husband, and she had to take care of the remaining children without a husband, so she continued to work at the store and tutor. James enjoyed his college life, going on group dates and participating in club activities. During summer and winter vacations, he would go down to his house and have a charcoal barbecue in the yard. When James went down, the whole family would chat away, losing track of time. That way, James recharged the love of his family every vacation at his hometown. James never missed being at the top of his class. The intensive workload at the engineering department left him no time for a part-time job. After graduating from university, James went on to graduate school, working on a professor's project and living off a meager stipend. Living with his aunt, James never felt ostracized or judged. His aunt was not only pretty, but also had a heart as pure as silk. She was an angelic woman who, while caring for her sick husband and working, never showed any signs of annoyance when James, her young nephew, had questions during his studies. The stress of having to care for a 10-year-old nephew who had moved into her home was significant, but the financial support from James' father, her older brother, seemed to have been a great comfort. She must have wanted to live well with her homely husband and kind children, despite her constant nagging. The occasional calls from James' father, thanking her for caring for his son and acknowledging her sacrifice, must have provided much comfort. James' father promised to take care of the agricultural products and sending fruits harvested from the greenhouse. Moreover, James was a child who grew well on his own without any assistance, so she never felt burdened because of her nephew. James would seek out his aunt whenever he encountered a problem while studying, which made her very proud. In fact, she even studied high school math in her spare time to help James. Once, James brought home a report card stating he was second in the entire school, making her so proud of James that she hugged him and patted his shoulder, praising his hard work. She considered James her eldest son and raised him as such. When her husband passed away, reality hit her hard. Fortunately, James was quick-witted and started to take over the role his uncle would have done. James, who was handy, fixed things around the house, and she began to rely on him little by little. Thanks to James teaching his cousins, their grades started to rise. Her son was able to enter a university as good as James, and her daughter is maintaining top-ranking grades in high school. She believes that all of this is thanks to James. After finishing graduate school, James landed a job at a renowned research institute in the region. Having received a good education and secured a job through city life, James shared this joyful news with his aunt and parents. At that time, James had a girlfriend. He had been dating her for 5 years, and through her bright and sunny personality, he was able to find mental stability. James tried to spend nights with his girlfriend while studying for his master's degree, but no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't succeed. But James kept trying and believed that time would solve it. After receiving his new employee training, James came up to the city on the weekend. After getting a job, James bought a gift for his aunt, who treated him like her own child. He was considering marrying his girlfriend, so he planned to visit her house together to express his gratitude for raising him all this time. However, something came up for his girlfriend, and James ended up going to his aunt's house alone, where a small incident occurred. Upon arriving at her city home, he found his aunt writhing in severe abdominal pain. James quickly called 911, and they were rushed to the university hospital. There, they diagnosed her with kidney stones, and she was able to be discharged after undergoing lithotripsy. It was a close call. If James had been just a little bit late, who knows what could have happened to his aunt. James contacted his cousins and asked them to look after their aunt in the hospital. Before returning to his training center, he came back to his aunt's house a week later, only to encounter a sight he wasn't supposed to see. His aunt was about to take a shower, and James caught a glimpse of her. He had lived unaware of how beautiful his aunt was. She quickly finished her shower and came out, and James gave her the nutritional supplements he had bought for her. He said, "Aunt, thank you for raising me so well. I was able to live comfortably because you always treated me comfortably. Thank you again." His aunt hugged him and said, "James, thank you for growing up so wonderfully while living in our house. And I'm touched that you came to visit with a gift." She was crying, and James could feel her loneliness and sorrow due to her husband's absence. James hugged his aunt, and they cried together. He comforted her by patting her back. After a while, she stopped crying and said, "James, I don't know if I should say this, but since your uncle passed away, I've been relying on you as a man. Would you like to stay at our house tonight if you have nothing else to do? The kids said they're going out with their friends, so I'm planning to sleep alone tonight." James smelled a nice scent from his aunt, who had just showered, and he noticed a reaction in his body. James ended up having an awkward but inevitable affair with his aunt. His girlfriend, with whom he had been unsuccessful no matter how much he tried, had been a bit frustrating. But he and his aunt were a perfect match. His aunt, who had not met a man since her husband's passing, said she couldn't tell whether it was a dream or reality to spend this time with her healthy, young nephew. She confessed that she didn't remember the last time she felt good as a woman, or how many years she spent lonely nights alone. It was very hard. Although it was his first relationship and awkward, James and his aunt were greatly satisfied as she comfortably led the way. James promised to compensate for her lonely times, and they spent a very good time together twice. James is now visiting the city more often to see his aunt, rather than his girlfriend. His aunt is waiting for James, and when they have a relationship, she calls him honey in a nasal voice. James swears not to leave his aunt alone,